Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Gilson?
Here.
Colosimo?
Present.
Scott?
Here.
Nolshinsky? Here. Munns?
Here.
Buckhauser?
Here.
Spears?
Present.
Teeling?
Here.
Quorum is established.
Okay, are there any amendments to the agenda tonight? George?
I'd like to pull PW 2011-12 for further discussion.
Anyone else? Going once, going twice. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we do have two presentations this evening. One for Blackberry Creek Watershed Plan update. And is the presenter here, Bart?
So good evening. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Tara Neff and I'm with the Conservation Foundation. And I'm just here to kind of give you a brief update of the watershed planning process that we have going on in Blackberry Creek.
I think they stand there when I was done. I gotta send this.
They're here. So just to give you an overview, and certainly we're looking for input from the United City of Yorkville, and what Christy has been attending our meetings as well, and she helped me get this item onto the agenda. And so we'll start with really generally what is a watershed. And a watershed is the area of land that catches snow and rain as it finds its way to a river or stream or the groundwater. And you really can't not be in a watershed. So no matter where you are, whether your home is overlooking a beautiful river, you're still part of a watershed. How we use our land has a huge impact on the quality of water. And I guess the most important thing here for when we look at watershed planning is that the watershed, so the watershed scale, has become the planning and management unit of choice for water concerns. Areas of concern that we're looking at for our watershed, which is more than just one stream segment, we're looking at an area, a more regional area. One of the things that's a major concern are chlorides that we use for our de-icing operations or fighting in winter snow practices. The chlorides that find their way into our rivers and streams doesn't ever go away. So these are permanently then in our water, which can have a huge impact if you're relying on groundwater or river water for your drinking water. Another issue of concern is stream bank erosion. So not only are we losing all this valuable topsoil, we're also increasing siltation and sedimentation downstream. So I heard that when you have turf grass or you don't have a naturalized buffer zone along a stream segment, 90% of what you apply to turf grass becomes runoff and runs directly into the stream. So when you increase native landscaping, can increase infiltration to kind of filter pollutants before they find their way into our streams. Algae, another thing that's of a concern throughout our watershed, is nutrients getting into our waterways. These are the result of runoff. It's not only unsightly, but it is also harmful to aquatic life. One of the biggest areas of concern for the Blackberry Creek watershed is flooding. And I think this first plan that was 1999 was the result of the flooding, I think that was in 1996. And so when you think back to the first slide I showed you, how we use our land in a watershed has a huge impact on water quality. It also has a huge impact on the volume or the amount of rainwater that you have to deal with and the rate at which you'll have to manage that. So when you change surfaces from pervious to impervious surfaces, you have a potential strain on your sewer systems. Another thing is fecal coliform. So when you think of fecal matter, you can think of goose poo, or you could also think of, livestock is another potential source. And they're looking at, if you would just take one and pass it along to you. And they're looking at fecal coliform as an indicator for more harmful bacteria. So things like E. coli that are found in fecal matter. So when you use native grasses or native vegetation, if you'll notice around detention ponds, there sometimes are a lot of geese there and they leave all their little presents for you. If you have naturally higher grasses along those ponds, it discourages them from being there because they're afraid they might become prey for a predator. Just a little fun fact there. So those are some of the concerns that we're looking at addressing through our watershed plan. And our watershed plan is involving across municipal boundaries. We're looking at involving local stakeholders who are the experts, who are aware of the concerns in their areas. They are historically more able to give input on the concerns, what they've tried, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what they might want to try in the future. And the watershed plan then results in a plan that addresses specific problems with solutions so that you can use this approved plan then to apply for federal dollars to implement recommendations in the plan. So a watershed plan, it recommends the voluntary methods to protect and enhance our water quality, and it develops an action plan for restorative and preventative measures. It focuses on a waterway and its tributaries. So again, the watershed scale, not just the stream here in my backyard, but collaborative approach. It is not a legally binding document. It is not a means for designating land uses. It is not a required of local comprehensive plans. There are 9 required elements that must be incorporated into a watershed plan, and that is, going back a couple slides, identifying and quantifying the causes and sources of impairments. And so there is this list that are required to be incorporated in your plan, and it includes things like education and outreach. That's another component that we'll be looking to complete, along with assessed financial and resources that might be necessary to improve water quality based on different best management practices you might incorporate. And then also creating a way to measure your successes towards achieving some of the goals in our watershed plan. There's additional regional criteria that we had looked at incorporating into our watershed plan. It takes a look collectively, again, at comprehensive land use plans to kind of determine what impact those might have on future water quality issues. And we are also been asking our different stakeholders in our watershed to submit their ordinances and codes so that we can compare those with the U.S. EPA's water quality scorecard. So to give you a little bit of, reference, we're looking here. And the darker green area is the Blackberry Creek watershed, and this is how it kind of fits into the larger Fox River Basin. And the Fox River Basin is the 3rd largest tributary to the Illinois River. And one of the great things about this basin is that it has all of these great natural resources. So we did a water resource inventory. There's all these great man-made and natural and human resources throughout our watershed. And the draw of having this hugely attractive area is that land use may be developed and it increases population, which increases strains on resources. So the quality of the lower Fox River Basin gives us a point of reference for our watershed. So the Blackberry Creek watershed, again, you can see is here, outlined in the dark black. And it extends through parts of Kane and Kendall counties, and it has like 6 municipalities that we are really trying to get to kind of come together, work collaboratively, share ideas, get a handle on things. We also have available from previous efforts to work collaboratively throughout the Blackberry Creek watershed the original management plan, which was primarily used to address the flooding concerns, while this plan is different in that it's more concerned about water quality concerns and using best management practices for non-point source or stormwater runoff. There's also available the Blackberry Creek Watershed Alternative Futures Analysis, and that was published in 2003. That kind of helps us look into the future to determine how we'll have impacts on our water quality. So currently, the Blackberry Creek was assessed and found to be fully supporting for aquatic life. It's been found not supporting for primary contact, which is swimming, due to the presence of fecal coliform. So that goes back to like goose poo, poo from wildlife, poo maybe from humans, livestock, that kind of stuff. Blackberry Creek was not assessed for secondary contact, which would be boating, fish consumption, or aesthetic quality. And we know that flooding is another area of concern that we have throughout the watershed. So what happens was, with this impairment, due to the presence of fecal coliform, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency sent a grant to the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, which is a regional planning resource in northeastern Illinois, to complete the watershed plan. So their job is to make sure that we incorporate those 9 required elements. They'll be in charge of finalizing and compiling all of the information to make sure that we meet our deadline. And then CMAP, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, contracted with the Conservation Foundation to provide planning, coordination, and technical assistance, and the Fox River Ecosystem Partnership, or FREP, which is one of the Illinois Department of Natural Resources Partners for Conservation programs. So that brings us to where we've been and where we are and where we plan to be. This is kind of an abbreviated planning timetable. It started in September. It will conclude in December. We've looked at a lot of things, and this summer, May, June, and July, which is part of the reason that I'm here today, we're really seeking input from local stakeholders about what are some areas or projects that you can see in your community that should be incorporated into the plan. When you incorporate a project into the plan, it does not only, again, you can apply for the federal funds for implementation by having this approved watershed plan, but your projects that have been identified and included in the plan also get priority, okay? So that's why it's kind of important, and you know better where there might be some stream bank stabilization problems, or maybe you need some wetland restoration, or maybe there's a filter strip that needs to go along an agricultural field. There's lots of these things that you know exactly where they are and how that might be helpful that we would be very interested in incorporating into the plan. So that's what we're doing this summer. We'll conclude everything and submit our final draft copy to the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, and then after getting their feedback and finalizing all of the other concerns, the plan will be finalized in December. So what we're really asking you to do is to continue participating in our monthly stakeholder meetings. All of our agendas and presentations and meeting notes and draft documents are available on the Fox River Ecosystem Partnership website. We will be coming back around once the plan is finalized to look at having the United City of Yorkville actually adopt the plan, which is not stating that whatever's in the plan you're going to agree to do A, B, C, D. It's simply stating that as a city, you agree to the collective integration of this plan. So if you have any questions, you can certainly contact me. Again, I'm Tara from the Conservation Foundation, and I'll leave my card, here or there. Did anyone have any questions? Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Hey, Tara, I do have one question. The Blackberry Creek, isn't there a rating scale for creeks? What is Blackberry Creek? Is there a rating on it, like A, B, C, or?
I don't think it's necessarily a rating so much as it is information that the IEPA compiles based on the designated uses. If it's found to be not support of any of those 5 designated uses, it goes on to their 303B list of impaired waterways.
Okay.
And that document is available. The 2010 document, the integrated water quality report, is still in draft format because it hasn't gone through all the, qualitative and quantitative finalization process. But fecal coliform is definitely, and one of the biggest challenges coliform is the impairment, but the source is not known. So there are a lot of different potential contributors, and so that will be a challenge and something that we'll really be looking to incorporate local stakeholder feedback on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next we have a brief presentation by Bart and Rich on the whitewater course maintenance obligations.
Yeah, in your packet is the intergovernmental agreement between the state and the city that governs the maintenance and other obligations associated with the Glen D. Palmer Dam bypass and what we like to refer to as the Marge Klein whitewater course. And so this presentation was given in a little bit more informal setting at Park Board, and so we just wanted to give everybody an opportunity to see the obligations in a list format and then ask questions. So here's a map of the facility. This is actually the last page of your intergovernmental agreement. And we're going to be talking about the Denil fish ladder, which is at the north end of the river, which is actually a passageway. We're looking at this, north is up, for fish downstream, actually swim upstream to go above the dam. There is a, I believe it's called a sluice gate? Sluice gate. Thank you, Eric. Right here at the southern end of the dam that will actually allow water to be diverted from the channel into the river if there are particularly dry conditions. For those of you that don't know, during low flow conditions, the bypass channel will actually take on all of the water over the dam. So there will actually be no water coming over the dam, so we'll have to open this gate and then allow water to go through. And then, of course, the channel or the whitewater course itself. So in general, weekly maintenance, mowing, trimming, weeding, trash removal, things we do in all of our parks anyway, just becomes a little bit more of an interesting proposition when you're mowing grass with a river a couple feet away. So we'll get a little bit further in the presentation. There will be some safety measures we take as far as life jackets and just general staff planning to make sure that we're doing everything in a safe manner. General obstruction removal. If you've been there in the past couple weeks, you've probably seen a few large branches and logs that have been in the bypass. Eventually that will be our responsibility to go in and remove, whether it's by hand, if we had to, or preferably by winch, which we will be proposing to approve it in a future budget session so that we can more easily and more safely remove obstructions from the bypass. And then just a general inspection of the area. I'm going to go through the monthly and the semi-annual inspection checklist. And basically, if we see something during our weekly maintenance routine, we're going to report it to the IDNR or take care of it ourselves. Monthly maintenance, it's inspecting the fish ladder, which is at the north end of the dam, and removing trash, debris, and logs if water is being impeded. So there are different chambers in the actual fish ladder. So there's a situation where a log could get stuck in there, we might have to go and fish it out. There is going to, no pun intended, there is going to be a barrier, a floating barrier upstream of the fish ladder, so as logs and other debris come down the river, they shouldn't get stuck in the actual chambers themselves. But we also have to do that after heavy rain occurs. So this is our semi-annual maintenance checklist. We're supposed to do it 4 times a year, and there's a long list. There's an actual exhibit in the agreement, and it just says right on there, contact IDNR if you see this, or if you see this, the city needs to make a plan to fix it. So there's the list. A lot of them have to do with erosion issues, if the concrete deteriorates either at the fish ladder or in the dam abutment or in the bypass channel. If anything we see like that, we have to contact IDNR. They'll probably be out within a couple weeks, depending on the severity of the problem, to fix the issue or to plan with us to fix the issue. Things that we are responsible for. Erosion. Those of you that have been down there the past couple weeks, there's a fair amount of erosion on the lower half of the bypass channel. That's a problem, although not ours yet, and not one that we think will reoccur. There was some issue with the material that was actually built into the bypass. The IDNR doesn't think it was done per plan, so they've actually asked the contractor to go and rip out a lot of it and replace it with larger boulders that should not erode. So, and I'll get to that a little bit further on, but that is going to extend the official completion date of the project. So, but other things, uneven concrete blocks. There are some concrete blocks at the entrance point of the bypass channel. If we see exposed rusty metal, we need to make sure that we fix it. The vent pipe is blocked, and that's in the sluice gate, which it's like a 2 or 3 foot diameter gate with there's basically a fence before it. Grass over 12 inches tall. Obviously, that's not going to be an issue if we're mowing it every week. There are a few boulders in the facility that, if they're out of position, we may have to contract for. And that's only if we determine it to be a major issue. If it just affects the recreational aspects of the facility, we may make a determination that we're not going to touch it for a year or so. But if there's a safety issue associated with it, or it causes us more problems down the road as far as additional erosion, et cetera, we may want to fix it sooner rather than later. And then the buoys. The buoys were installed, I believe, this week. I have not seen them yet. Thank you. And we're going to be responsible for doing that by agreement. However, we are not going to come to you and ask for the approval of a municipal boat fleet, nor for anything other than life jackets. Bristol-Kendall Fire Department has stepped up and said, we have boats, we're going to be doing the swift water rescue anyway, and so we'd actually like to work with you to do that. So that was very helpful of them. So we are going to be working with them to take out the buoys before November 1st. And I believe that they were supposed to partner with the state when they put the buoys in, although I'm not sure if that occurred.
I'm not sure if it did either. I saw them this week.
I know that there was interest there. So, annual maintenance, we have to grease the sluice gate. So there's a budget for it. So items to purchase, I talked about life vests when we're doing general maintenance. We probably need 4 of them at least. Estimated cost $300 for 4 of them. We might be able to get them donated if there's a good Samaritan company in town that wants a little PR out of the deal. And then a hydraulic winch. And we will be able to use that for items not related to the bypass. And so we'll probably come to you and ask for that in budget approval next year. Or if we think that we can cut elsewhere in our budget, we may try to do it this year. Annual costs of maintenance. This is, again, I think it's the 5th or 6th to last page in the intergovernmental agreement. And it just basically lays out, what our cost is expected to be per year. Almost everything in both of these charts, I'm going to flip to the next page, are related to hourly wages. So we're not proposing to hire anybody additionally. We'll work it into our schedule to the extent that we can't get our other work done or the priorities of the council change over, the maintenance of these items. Then we may come back to you. But we're not anticipating anything at this time. So there are a few capital items on here. I put them on here on the next slide. Concrete repairs of the fish ladder and the bypass channel. There's some baffles, stop logs, sluice gate replacement. So if we wanted to adequately budget for a worst case scenario, both in replacing these items at the end of their lifespan and to maintain them, assuming that we have, one big concrete repair for 2 different items per year, we need to be budgeting about $11,620. Other issues that people have asked about, insurance. What's going to happen if somebody gets hurt down there? What happens if, the worst case scenario happens and somebody drowns? Well, we're going to completely finalize those issues next year when we take it over. Our property insurance and general liability insurance comes up at the end of the calendar year, and so that'll be adequate time for us to properly document that by the end of the year. But recreational amenities, which is what this is, have strong tort immunities. So we have had accidents in our park recently and further back that have resulted in injuries and worse. And, the state of Illinois has said over the years that municipalities and park districts, can't be liable for these type of recreational accidents as long as we're not, I believe the term is in willful and wanton misconduct. So as long as we're not doing anything really flagrant. So there's a possibility, though, that when our property insurance quote comes up next year, that our property insurance proposers may say, well, your base insurance rate is going to go up because you have this new feature. And there is a possibility, too, that they could say, we don't think this quite fits the standard model for property insurance, so we're going to go out for a separate policy. So we have a separate policy for liquor control. We have a separate policy for our bounce houses. And then additionally, we have seen mid-year, we've had to go back and actually purchase a rider for the old jail. That was $1,600. So we added that mid-year and we said, well, we have people wanting to do work on it, so we need to insure it, and that could be this type of situation too. So, other issues, life safety, I talked about Bristol Forest Fire. This is a use-at-your-own-risk facility. We're not manning it with lifeguards. There is a Code Blue station on the south bank of the river that does have an AED in it and a direct line to KenCom. So if there is an emergency situation, you can use the Code Blue unit, or you can call 553-4343, which I noticed when I put this on here, I think that we had replaced that with 911 at one point in the draft process. So that is going to be a recommendation that we make to the state to see if they will amend the sign. Talked about the swift water training. And the other thing is, too, is whenever you have a park, there's going to be some inherent risk with recreational amenities. But the more spectators you have there, the more likely that something is going to be caught the moment it happens, and the proper authorities are going to be notified and be able to respond to the crisis. And Rich, you feel free to talk about that if you have any thoughts. So, park issues, unique to this situation. No alcohol is allowed in parks unless we're doing a special event, which we permit it. But you are allowed to have alcohol in a boat under certain circumstances. So we know that there will be issues with people canoeing and kayaking down the river that are going to have a six-pack of beer with them, and then they're going to get out onto our riverbank and encounter some issues. So we'll need to make sure that that's properly signed and enforced. Parking, we do have a lot of parking down there, but as it becomes more popular, it could create an issue that we have to address. Traffic on the whitewater course, a lot of people have said, what if 100 people show up to use it? It's like any other open river whitewater feature. You wait in line to use it. You go through, you have a few minutes, and then you move on. So just talking to the paddlers, they don't expect that to be too much of an issue, even if there is a traffic jam. Traffic on land. We know that the bike path and the trail right next to the riverbank is going to be used by people with canoe and kayak totes, pedestrians, spectators. So that's just something that we'll have to make sure is signed and that people are being respectful of other people's rights of way. The timeline again for this, the state does expect to be completed with this by the end of September, and that's to address the erosion issues. And we do expect the pedestrian bridge to be constructed by the end of the calendar year. The state has issued the contract for the installation of the bridge, and they are still gathering an exact timeline. So that's all I have, unless Rich, you want to talk about the public safety issues associated with the...
Basically, the public safety issues about what Mark said, we are going to have to keep an extra watch on the area. As well as the fire department, we've also been going through training for whitewater rescue. It is not one of our primary concerns, but we do have throw ropes in the trunks of our cars, and we've been donated money by the Paddle Association to purchase some life vests and some things like that. So, like Bart said, the main points we have is fishermen fishing within the channel that may cause some conflict with some of the people that are using the, so that'll take a little bit of our presence to stop that. And like I say, I look forward to the whole thing.
Any questions, anybody? All right, thanks, guys. We do not have any public hearings tonight. Do we have any citizen comments? Please step up, sir. There should be a sign-in sheet up there. Please sign in.
First, I had a question about the last presentation. How much is Geneva Kayak going to charge the city for the training?
Would you like me to answer? Yeah, free. It's actually part of our lease agreement with them.
Okay, perfect. I planned on talking briefly about the issue that just won't go away, which is the bike path. But I'm glad I was here to see the presentation on the watershed plan, because that brought up a couple things in my mind. First of all, after seeing the presentation, clearly I think the best way to deal with minimal impact on the watershed is actually to decrease the population of the human race. So I think that, we need to let the animals and all that live. So I'll be doing everything that I can to decrease the population of the area. Second of all, the thing that troubles me about things like the watershed is that all these people talk about grant money. Okay, where does this grant money come from? I mean, is there a grant tree outside someplace where they just go pick grants off the tree and they get the money for this? So I kind of have a problem with that. Plus the fact, after seeing Bart's presentation about what the city's going to be responsible for regarding the river out here, that's kind of a list of eventually what the city's going to be responsible for in the watershed. Okay, now it was stated in the presentation that that's not the case. There's nothing binding here, but anybody who has anything to do with seeing the way government works, you all know that that's not true. Eventually, all that stuff has a way of becoming binding, and when it becomes binding, it has a way of costing taxpayers. So that's what I want to say about that. Now on the bike path, George sent out an email that discussed the annual maintenance cost of the bike path, even if it's built by private funding, and that's money that we, the taxpayers, are going to have to pay to the tune of $12,000 or so a year. That does not factor in cost of lawsuits, which will happen. People will get hurt. People might get raped. There could be all kinds of accidents that happen on a bike path. So I think that cost of $12,000 per year of maintenance to be borne by the city and ultimately by the taxpayers, you could probably double or triple that. So I would encourage the city to do whatever it can, whatever it has to do to say that the city cannot and will not be responsible for the maintenance of that bike path if and when it becomes something that's part of the infrastructure. I don't know what you can and can't do, but I would encourage you to explore all the options. And also, watching Bart's presentation, Bart always is fond of using the term worst-case scenario. Well, worst-case scenario, I don't know if your worst case initially was 6,000 and then you doubled it to 12, but I would take your worst case and double or triple the cost, because the worst case always tends to be a lot worse than it really was thought to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please state your name for the record and sign in, please.
Lisa Zalanese, Colonial Parkway, Your Honor.
I'm not used to that, Your Honor, thing.
No.
If I don't use it, my father will
Yeah.
resurrect himself. Your Honor, thank you for letting me speak. I wanted to clarify some comments that I had made last week. It was out of emotional binge there that I had when the young lady spoke about speaking to Dick Durbin and the Constitution of the United States, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe my statements weren't that clear. I believe she had everything backwards, and I hope people realize that I remember there was one time just a few years ago, there was a speaker who spoke at the University of Illinois, Chicago, when my son was graduating out of that university. Initially, the speaker had run for public office and made a strong stance against immigration. As an Hispanic, I took no offense. What I did take offense to was the actions or the things the incidents that had happened a few months before that, when there were protests for open borders and amnesty, when our flag was being burnt, being walked on, being trampled on, being urinated on, having the Mexican flag flown above the American flag. And this very same speaker called these folks as people coming over to seek their dreams. Your Honor, I was present. That speaker was Lisa Madigan. Lisa Madigan is not our friend. I also took issue with the young lady's comments that she was talking to Dick Durbin to see what Dick Durbin can do for the city of Yorkville. By the Constitution of the United States, we don't need Dick Durbin. We, the people, decide whether we will support Dick Durbin or not. And I've asked as to the gentleman's who just made the comments, it was Thomas Jefferson who said, "In questions of power, let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution." And again, this goes to, I think what he said is, the state is broke, our country is broke, yet again we've got grant money. Where the grant money comes when we're broke comes from, I don't know. We do have our homes, it is our property. We work hard, we maintain our property, we take care of our property. And I would just like to remind the council of two English poems written and repeated in the colonial days. The poorest man may in his cottage bid defiance to all the crowns of all the forces of the crown. It may be frail, its roof may shake, the wind may blow through it, the storm may enter, the rain may enter, but the King of England cannot enter. All his force dares not cross the threshold of the ruined tenement. For a man's house is his castle, and each man's home is his safest refuge. And I would just ask, Your Honor, that in the decisions that you'll be discussing and talking about in the coming months and coming years, that you remember our property and that it's we the people that build the city and not any state's attorney, any U.S. senator, or any House of Representatives, member of the House of Representatives. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anyone else from the audience have any comments?
Thank you, Mayor. Dave Richmond. I'm here, I'll speak briefly on the water ordinance, which is on agenda 2011-12. It was on the consent agenda and taken off for this evening. I know this isn't the forum to have a discussion. At the committee meeting is the forum to have it. And I was at that forum, and I'm not sure if any new concerns since then have arisen. Happy to do my best to answer them. This water ordinance has no cost to the city. It also, only liability to the city is the city will not put will not take potable water from the contaminated area, which is in Orange Street. I asked this evening that I encourage a vote on this ordinance to move forward, and I also encourage you to vote yes on the ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified.
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Lozano,
Present.
Milczynski,
Aye.
Spears,
Aye.
Munn,
Aye.
Funkhazer,
Aye.
Gilson,
Aye.
Teeling,
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
Your Honor, if I may, I just wanted to clarify for the public and people watching, I voted present just because my last check for, as the administrative hearing officer was on the bill payment list, and I didn't feel it appropriate to vote for myself for a check, so I have no objection to anything on the consent agenda. I just wanted it to be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Public Works Committee report. And before we go forward, you'll notice that the agenda is changed a little bit. We kind of moved things around to help streamline these meetings a little bit. And we moved the committee reports to the top of the agenda, because I mean, that's pretty much the meat and potatoes of why we're here to discuss it. And there's no point in discussing these things at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. So we'll see how this new agenda format works out. If we have problems with it, we can fix it, see what we like. So, Public Works Committee?
Just bear with me, I'm getting to that page.
Yes. There's two items on there, one we pulled off consent and bike trails.
Let me get to that in this packet. Do PW number 1?
Yeah, I would think so.
Public Works, PW 2011-33, the bike trail maintenance cost. I think this is just an informational item.
Yes.
So Barb, if you want to go ahead and inform. We talked about this in committee, and we asked for this to be moved forward for open discussion. Sure. The discussion in committee really revolved around what is the actual cost of maintaining, repairing, and replacing bike trails over their lifespan. So the question really revolved around at the committee, the Route 47 section, which is what we'll have to make a decision on whether or not we want to fund it in the next few months as part of the Route 47 expansion process. And at the committee meeting and after doing our own analysis, detailed analysis, we found that the maintenance costs that I had quoted and that some of the staff had quoted as a grab number based off of what we were currently doing was wrong. We were saying that it was about $10,000 per year for all 6 of the trails as part of the bike trail referendum. And really, if you want to seal coat, every 3 years, which is what's recommended, if you're going to maintain 10% of the total bike trail square yardage with potholes over a 25-year period, and then budget for the replacement of those trails, the costs are actually much higher. So, part of that is just staff error. We didn't spend nearly as much time, obviously, this time as we did last time in formulating that number. But the second thing is our maintenance costs, our actual maintenance costs of our current trails have been significantly under what we show in the spreadsheet because we haven't really done any maintenance. We've kind of just let the trails go as is. We did our first seal coating, I believe it was a year or two ago. We did it on all of our trails. So when you extrapolate that cost over the lifespan of the trails, $10,000 is probably not that far out of the realm of possibility. Is it ideal? Certainly not. Will it create issues? Yeah, perhaps. If we have 20 miles of trails and we maintain them to that level, there will be potholes eventually that we'll need to replace. So definitely not realistic as far as a comprehensive maintenance package goes, but not entirely false either. So at the committee, they did ask me to extrapolate those costs to all 6 of the trails that were communicated as part of the bike trail referendum. And so that's actually shown in a new spreadsheet that I attached to the end of the agenda item. And basically it shows that if you had all 6 trails in place, budgeting again for seal coating every 3 years, 10% of the trail is going to get potholes over the lifespan, and then the replacement costs, you'd want to set aside $66,757.39. And that would adequately cover all your maintenance and replacement costs associated with it. Again, our actual cost would probably be less than that. Could be more than that if asphalt goes up. You never know. But that is probably a little bit more realistic expectation of what we, would want to maintain the trails to.
The one thing I pointed out in my email, Bar, which I think is very unclear in the way we're conveying to the people, is that original $10,000 figure that we had out there, or that we gave to our constituents, was based on the entire trail system. It was what you'd stated, or what we had stated originally was it was $1,000 per mile is the rough average. If you do $1,000 per mile, a maintenance cost times 2.44, that'd only be $2,440. So it's really the $10,000 that we had stated was the original maintenance cost was for the entire trail system. Now it's $12,293.44 for the first 2.44 miles. So it's a big, significant difference. It's nowhere near what we originally stated. And I want people out there to understand that, because that is what we conveyed, that's what was said, and it's nowhere near that. Okay? And the reason why I put this on the agenda was for one reason and one reason only, is because I want this discussed out in the open. And I've spoken to people about this. Is I've gone out and I've worked with a non-for-profit group. I know what it's like to raise money from a grassroots effort. It's very hard. It's difficult to do. It takes a lot of effort to do that. And, I would hate to see that sort of effort be put into this, them come to the council, and for us to say no because we weren't upfront about our concerns with the maintenance costs. And so that's why I put this out to be discussed out in the open. I think it's important that it does stay out in the open, and that's why we're here.
The bike trails that we have, or the paths that we have now, do we budget this much money for them currently?
No.
Are we going to start, since this is what we're supposed to be doing, are we going to start budgeting for this? Because, if we're going to use this to say that this is how much it's going to cost, then this is the actual cost of what we should be spending on the trails that we currently have. So that maybe we need, if that's the case, I don't believe that it is going to cost this much. How many miles of bike trail or trails do we currently have in the city? Approximately.
Let's see, 5 or 6 was the number off the top of my head. I don't know for sure.
Okay. Well, how much in the last year, or I don't know, how much do we budget annually for these trails?
Right now, we haven't budgeted anything other than the cost of seal coating 2 years ago.
And do you remember offhand how much that was?
That, I believe, was $3,000 or $4,000, if I remember correctly. Okay.
It was like 7 cents a square foot, and they did a few miles of trails.
Okay.
And that was in...
We'll go back.
Okay. And then have we filled potholes? Have there been potholes to fill?
That came more from our dealings with Fox Hill, where we filled many. I think we did a few $1,000 worth of pothole bills on.
Okay. And these are that are almost 10 years old. So they were 7 years old or 8 years old at the time.
Are those part of the HOA?
Those are all HOA, but that's where the numbers came from.
Oh, that's where the numbers came from.
The numbers came from. Ours are still fairly young, and more than likely, the potholes will increasingly get bigger and worse towards the end of the lifespan.
Okay, and so, so the trails that you're talking about in this, are they the ones we're talking about, the ones that are 10 years old that we just seal coated? I'm confused.
And River's Edge is one of them, and they're escaping me now. But,
okay, and then, we're going to have the Safe Route to School money that we're going to be putting in sidewalks and fixing sidewalks. Are we going to budget for maintenance for those as well?
That's all prerogative of the city council.
Right. I think that if we're going to use this as, to say that this is a bad thing to do and this is how much it's going to cost, I think we need to be realistic and look at the past, at what we spent on the bike trail, on the trails that we currently have, and see if this is realistic, if this is what we spent anywhere near this amount of money on maintenance, on maintaining these trails.
We have not.
No.
No. Currently, our to-date numbers over the lifespan of our trails have been far below what I estimated. That's why I said it's probably higher than what we had thrown out initially as part of the bike trail referendum. But it certainly is nowhere near $66,000,
No.
what that equates to.
No. So if we're going to use this, then, we have to look at the history, too, of how much we've spent on the trails that we currently have.
Rose?
My feelings are twice the referendum was voted down by our residents, our taxpayers. So I would like to have the people that are going to be collecting donations and the people that are going to donate to cover the maintenance expenses. Since the majority of the people have already said no to the bike trail, they voted on it twice. Well, if we are going to have people that donate, and God bless them, I mean, that's terrific, but let them cover all the maintenance as well, because we don't want this burden to go on to the taxpayers who said no. They not only said no once, they said no twice. And also, as far as the sidewalk program, the safe walks to schools, I believe that that is beneficial for the community, for our children. I'd like to see it in other areas also where we don't have sidewalks for our children to walk. Grand Reserve, that's their biggest complaint. The children are walking in the streets. But as far as this bike trail that was voted no twice, then let's collect enough money, the $66,757, and cover all the maintenance as well.
I did ask about the Grand Reserve, the safe route to school, and they said that didn't qualify.
Right.
But I think these are beneficial for the city, too, because we have other children that use these when they run down 47 with the cross-country team. I think they're beneficial, too.
Anyone else have questions or comments on the bike trail maintenance costs? I guess I do have one question, and, George, you bring up a good point. If we are going to be doing this fundraising effort, collecting donations from private citizens, I mean, we have to know how this council feels. If we feel that we shouldn't accept private donations because of the maintenance costs, that we will not vote to fund this and put these trails in, there's no need to go through a fundraising effort. I mean, it's a waste of everyone's time. And I think that should be said sooner rather than later. So I don't know how we go about it. Do we want to do a straw poll or?
Well, I mean, I'll be happy to give my opinion as to where I stand today, and everybody else can do the same, I guess. The concern I have, and I can definitely appreciate raising the private funds, the concern that I have is what Rose said, that it went to referendum twice and the people said no. Now, whether the question went to referendum twice and said, if we can get free bike trails, would you be willing to pay the maintenance? We might get a different answer. I don't know. But right now, the only guidance that I have is the two referendums that have passed, and the people have said no. Once again, we represent the people. If you're watching here or you're reading in the newspapers and you have an opinion, contact your alderman. If we get bombarded one way or the other, then obviously that would influence our decision. But as I stand here today, I have no choice but, if it were to come before me today, to vote no, based on the two referendums where the people have voted and said they don't want the bike trails. So that's where I stand as of today.
Yes, I agree with the alderman there that I voted to put it on a referendum. It was voted down twice. It was a resounding, voice from the community. So unless some other plan comes up where we can fund the maintenance, I agree that if we had to vote on it today, I'd be voting no against it unless there was a plan. Just like all these parks we put in, you forget down the road, these things are going to need to be maintained, and that's just as much as the cost of building it. So again, if it came up for a vote today, I'd be voting no also.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Chris.
I agree, as stated. One other thing I want to state, though, is that when we look at the maintenance on this, we need to look at a proactive measure for this. History is a good indicator. We've under-maintenanced it, but it is a good indicator of how we've run things in the past, which we've seen this in our streets and other infrastructure that we have under-maintenance. We need to be able to take a proactive step here. And if this is something that would be approved by the council, and this is moved forward, we need to do this proactively. We cannot take the low end of the maintenance costs and assume that that's a fair assessment. Because in these times, it's not, because this is what has got us into some of our problems financially in the past.
Well, then I'm assuming that we're going to increase our budget for all the trails and sidewalks in the city this year, when we talk about the budget again.
I mean, are you advocating that we don't start budgeting for maintenance of
No,
all this
I'm not,
infrastructure long term?
but I'm not saying that. I'm
confused.
saying that we have, you're using numbers that we have not used on the bike trails that we have now. So I think if this is what you're saying, then we need to increase our budget to take care of the trails that we have now. That's what I'm hearing here right now.
We need to start budgeting for streets. We need
Right,
to
I
start
know that,
budgeting for
but-
sidewalks. We need to start budgeting for all these things that we have, like we just stated, the things we haven't done in the past. That's the essentials of government, is making sure that the streets, the sidewalk, and some of these other items are fixed, repaired, and up to par. That's what we're talking about. And not to be proactive about this now would be, in my opinion, a bad move on the city's part, not to look at it and to look at that. And you're right. I think your point is exactly right. Those things that we didn't budget for, we better start thinking about that, because they're going to have to be maintained and replaced and removed and other things. So that money needs to be there.
I agree with Alderman Gilson. If anybody takes a walk around my neighborhood in Ward 1 in the old part of Yorkville, if you walk down Blaine or Morgan or Orange or State, any of those streets, there are potholes that could swallow a bicycle. I mean, before we start thinking about new infrastructure, we have to take care of the infrastructure we have. So yes, we do have priorities. Everybody would love bike trails. I would love bike trails. I cycle. It's not a question of whether we want it or not. It's a question of priorities. So to me, we do have to, you're absolutely right, Alderman Teeling, we do have to budget for infrastructure. However, we have to take care of the infrastructure that we have currently before we start looking at future infrastructure. We're not the federal government. We don't have the luxury of borrowing money from China. The only money that we get is from the residents on their tax bill, and I think after everybody's seen their tax bill this time around, we have to be very cautious with the way we handle that money. So until that's taken care of, it's going to be a very hard sell for this council, in my opinion, to install these bike trails.
Art, can you clarify why we haven't spent the money on the trails that we already have? Is it they haven't needed it, we just haven't had the money?
A little of both. It's a budget decision each year. It's same as road maintenance. I mean, the last 2 years, this year included, we spent $50,000 each year citywide on potholes. So it's a decision that when we do look at the budget again, that if it's a priority to make sure that our bike trails or sidewalks are at a nice, in a nice condition, there needs to be a line item somewhere in the budget that says, $20,000 for bike trail maintenance, and that'll give a clear direction to staff that that's where the priority is, and then they'll get completed.
At what level are the bike trails that we have now? Like, are they deteriorating? Do they need work? Are we?
That I'd have to bring back to you. I'm not sure off the top of my head. All I know is that we've done seal coating. If there were any major safety issues, I suspect that they would have been brought to my attention already. So I'm sure they're not in great condition, but.
So it would have been helpful to have that money budgeted in the past and use it.
Yes, certainly.
Butler.
No, just listening to the discussion, I'm all for bike trails. And I think most people in this room probably are for bike trails. It's just, once again, the priority of you only have so much money to spend, and quite frankly, I'm embarrassed by some of our streets. It's a real shame they've gotten to that point, and I understand with the economy, why it's happened, but correct me if I'm wrong, though. I mean, we can build these bike trails at a later date, right? That land's not going anywhere. It's going to be set aside for that purpose?
No, not for the projects associated with Route 47 construction. So, and some of the other state expansion. So, in some cases, yes, like for Kennedy Road, there are things that the state's not doing, so that land theoretically will still be there. But for Route 47, if we say no, they're going to acquire less right-of-way probably than they would if they had to acquire for bike trails. So there might actually be a scenario where, yes, the land is still there, but the state is not going to own it. So we would have to go through for the acquisition of that property.
What they will do is put in wider shoulders if we choose
Right.
not to fund bike trails, correct?
Generally, yes.
So theoretically, people could ride bikes on the wider
Oh, yes.
trails.
And that's why they make them wider? Do they make them?
Yes.
How much wider is it?
Joe, do you have a cross-section?
The outside lane will be 1 foot wide. Each direction.
So how wide would it be in total?
I think I'm not being stupid. The outside lane will be 13 feet or 14 feet wide. 12 feet. Bicycles can ride it.
So bicycles easily can ride on that, correct? 12 feet, 13 feet?
Well, they would share that lane with vehicles.
Oh, okay, okay. How wide would just the, for bicycles or people walking or whatever they want to use? Is that 4 feet? That's what I heard at one time.
I believe it's 2.
Oh, just 2? Okay. Could somebody check that just to let us know?
Maybe I'm misreading the question a little bit, but if we don't do the bike trails, they'll basically just widen the roadway, and then the shoulder will either be grass or aggregate material, and then the actual the road lane will be wider than normal, and so people will be expected to ride on the roadway.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if that helped or not.
Okay.
I was trying to.
So would the lane line, white paint on the road, be all the way to the edge of the wider road, or would it be 2 feet short, to where you have a line and 2 feet?
Good question.
There would be no line between a bike lane and the outside lane. It would just be one lane that would be a little bit wider.
Okay.
That vehicles and bicycles would share.
Oh, for a visual, take like on Van Emmen, they have a wider shoulder, people ride bikes on there. So you're saying that white line, such as on Van Emmen, will not exist?
Correct.
I was under the impression that the scenario with the wider lane was similar to that of Viola Road, where there is a 3 or 4 foot section to the right of the white striped lane. That was my understanding.
That was my understanding, too.
Yeah.
So this is contrary to that understanding that had been portrayed previously.
I'm fairly certain that's not.
Okay. Yeah, if you could get back to us.
Any other questions, comments on this topic?
I have one. What would it cost to just put a white line in there so we could have 2 feet of walking bikes?
I don't believe the outside lane would have to be widened more to put an actual lane there. That's to put a stripe there. And in order for IDOT to do that, the city would need to agree to pay for a portion of that widening. But there's a minimum width for a bike lane, an on-road bike lane. And I think the minimum width is 4 feet or so, as you said. But the city would have to pay for that roadway widening. A portion, 20% of the cost of that, similar to the sidewalk and trail.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, George.
I asked this question in committee, and I still don't know why we couldn't step outside the box. The bike trails are proposed to be 10 feet wide. 10 feet. I mean, that's huge. Those are huge bike trails. And I asked why 10 feet, and it's, well, that's always been the standard. Well, I mean, maybe it's something people need to reconsider. If you went forward with this, I mean, a 10-foot wide trail it's outrageous. It's huge.
Maybe you should call IDOT about that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I can change it, but all I'm saying is, the reason why we're discussing this is because out of committee, like I said before, I know there's people out there that have pledged to work hard to raise funds, and as of right now, I mean, I agree with the majority here so far that I hear is we have a hard time budgeting for maintenance the things we have, and this is something that has to be considered now.
One more question. Have we checked with any other communities that have paths and how much they spend on their trails for maintenance and what they do?
Yes. I've contacted a few of them, more than a few of them. None of them have gotten back to me with the definitive number.
Okay.
It's usually buried between different line items, and
Right.
It's not something you usually put in a budget or a CAFR. It's or an audit. It's usually requires a fair amount of research.
Okay.
One other question, Bart. How wide are the trails that we have now?
Joe, do you know?
Most are 10 feet wide.
Okay.
All the trails, or most of them
Some
we have
are
are 10? 8 and 10?
Joe, do they do the 10-foot wide because it's like divided for traffic? Like,
There's no striping.
okay.
10 foot is a federal standard. We have had discussions with IDOT just recently about going the narrow way.
Okay, anyone else? I mean, it sure seems like we have clear directive from the council. Okay.
PW 2011-12, 802 South Bridge Street proposed groundwater ordinance. I brought this back once again for discussion. Dave asked a question if there had been any further information after committee, and there has, and that's why I brought it back for further discussion. After committee, I asked the question of if we go forward with this groundwater ordinance, what does that mean in terms of the issuance of a no further remediation letter? And the answer I got was if we do go forward with this, it's automatic. They automatically give a no further remediation letter. That is my rub. And I'll tell you why it's my rub, and I'll explain it, at least my view here to the council, and let the council decide what's best. But, my rub is the state has lust funds, and lust fund is leaky underground storage tank funds. The state developed a standard for storage tanks. That standard didn't hold up, and they leaked, and if you look at a lust map for the state of Illinois, they are all over the place. There are tons of lust fund sites, okay? The lust fund program that they have is supposed to have money in each fund for each site to remediate those particular properties. And the state, is in charge of that program. I think we talked about in committee, and correct me if I'm wrong, they stated that even for ours, the contractor who did the remediation in 2009 still hasn't been paid. Is that correct? I mean, I thought that's what was mentioned in the committee meeting. And that being said, if we move forward to approve this, basically what we're saying is that program's okay. You developed a standard, the standard failed. There's lust funds all over the state. You don't have the money in those lust funds to remediate contaminated property. And by us passing this ordinance, this groundwater ordinance, it's okay because you're going to get an automatic no further remediation letter issued. And that's my rub. It has nothing to do with Dave Richmond, has nothing to do with the Beardsleys, has nothing to do with Fatso Tires. None of that. My rub is we're saying by doing this that it's okay. And for me, personally, I have internal issues with saying that. So that's my comments for what they're worth. Appreciate it.
Bart, I have a question. If we pass this ordinance and the NFR letter is issued by the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, that's my question. What happens in the future if this area needs to be remediation? Obviously, we've let the owner off the hook. He has his letter. He doesn't have to do anything. I don't trust the state of Illinois to have two dimes to rub together to come in here and help us with lust funds. At that point, if the remediation is needed, is the city on the hook? Are we on the hook for that money?
It's a good question. I'm going to defer to Mr. Wyrot if you have any expertise in the area.
I don't have a great deal of expertise with this, but there is a state statute that is in your packet for this. I'm not going to read it. But basically, from what I understand, the Lust Fund is still available to further remediate areas that might exist after an NFR letter is approved. I don't know who the correct entity would be to access that money, if it would be the original owner or if it would be the owner of the property at the time. But I do know that it says that the Lust Fund money would still be available or be eligible to use Lust funds.
I have a question. Can you answer this one? As George stated, the last contractor has not been paid in 2 years from the Lust Fund. Is that correct?
I did do research on that. From what I remember, there were 4 invoices sent to the state for this particular site. 2 have been paid. 2 are still waiting for payment.
And when were they sent?
From what I understand, there's about a 2-year waiting list for reimbursement through the Lust Fund.
So there's a 2-year waiting list just for our property in Yorkville, but we did see a map with a gazillion people waiting for Lust funds, or so that may push us back to 30 or 40 years before the money is ever distributed to everybody. I mean, I don't think we're a priority in Yorkville.
It's a first come, first serve. You get in line. It's
Right.
a queue waiting list. So you get in line and you wait till you rise to the top, and then you get your monthly reimbursement.
And I'm sure that list is huge.
It's about 1,000 invoices long.
Okay. Thank you.
Diane?
It seemed like in conversations that we had in Public Works before that if anybody did any work there, they are responsible for anything that happens. Isn't that correct? If, like, when IDOT comes in to do work, to dig, they're going to be responsible if there was any problem or moved or... Can you refresh? I remember having some sort of a conversation about this.
That was when we were considering a highway authority agreement. The city would
Okay.
have a permitting responsibility.
So that's out, that's not in this...
Well, the permitting responsibility is out, yes.
Okay.
If IDOT goes in there when they do 47 and they find contaminated soils, I think it's very likely that IDOT would be the one that would share the cost or bear the cost
Right.
of moving those contaminated soils.
So the person who's doing the work is responsible for removing the contaminants. That's kind of the gist of what I got in our Public Works meeting when we were talking about this.
From a practical point of view, I think the person doing the work would end up at least fronting the cost and probably seeking reimbursement from the Lust Fund.
And that would be the only reason that we would need to have this remediated? Are there other reasons why this would need to be remediated? Is if it was disturbed?
If it was disturbed,
That's-
that'd be the only reason we would, otherwise it's just going to sit there.
Right.
Mr. Wyrot, looking at the map that you provided for us in the packet, we have one of our own sanitation sewers going right through that area. So if there's an issue with that sanitation sewer, aren't we the ones digging, and now aren't we on the hook for the remediation? And now we get into this queue to be reimbursed 2 years from now.
There's one sanitary sewer, one storm sewer that goes through that area currently. Both of those sewers are scheduled to be abandoned as part of the Route 47 project. The city will have no utilities within the area after the 47 project is complete.
But I guess it goes back to my original question. If something needs to be done, and the owner's not going to do it, and the Lust Fund's monies are not available, I just want to know, is the city on the hook? If the city's on the hook, I don't want to pass this ordinance. If the city has no liability, then I don't have a problem passing the ordinance. So, that's a critical question for me that needs to be answered.
If the city were to dig in there and discover contaminated soils above a certain level that would need to be removed, the city more than likely would bear the cost of removing that soil and then seeking reimbursement from the Lust Fund. There would be no reason for the city to go in there, however. Once these two sewers are abandoned, the road is going to be reconstructed. The contamination is by and large below that 5-foot elevation, which is well below the depth that you would ever want to go for roadway reconstruction. So I think it's very, very unlikely the city would ever have a need to go into that area.
I think the better way to phrase the question that maybe we can ask somebody at the IPA is, what are the chances of them rescinding an NFR, a no further remediation letter? Because that's essentially what it does, is it says you don't have to do anything else with the site. It's acceptable even if it's not perfectly clean, but it's generally protected. So, that would be a scenario where, they would say, well, yes, we've issued this NFR, but we need to repeal it for whatever reason. What's the likelihood that's going to happen, and then what happens in that case? So there might be somebody at the IEPA we can ask and get back to you if that's an answer.
Okay, did you have a question?
Joe answered it.
Okay.
Just a quick question. I don't know if we know this or not, but say, for instance, we had to come in here at some point after our utilities are abandoned and we did disturb this. Do we have any idea for this area that's 102 foot by the width of the road? If we had to remediate, how much would have to come out and how much do we think that could potentially cost us? Has there been anything done to generate some liability for ourselves?
No, I mean, it depends on the quantity of soil to be removed. I do remember talking to the current mitigation contractor who said that the current cost of excavating and disposing of 1 cubic yard of contaminated soil is something on the order of $60 per cubic yard. But it depends on how many cubic yards you have to dig out.
Okay, where do we go from here? You want to table it? Do we get
Yeah,
motion?
sure.
We'll have to make a motion to.
Yeah.
We haven't motioned it.
I'll make a motion to table this. Oh,
No, you have to first put it on the floor. We never did a motion.
Yeah, we didn't do a motion before we
So we have to put
discussed
it on the
it.
floor and then table.
Okay. So,
Should move the
let me
motion.
get back to it here. The original motion was,
Catherine isn't.
yeah.
Make it up, George.
So we're going to do PW 2011-12, an ordinance prohibiting the use of groundwater as a potable water supply by the installation of use of potable water supply wells or by any other method. Authorize mayor and city and clerk to execute.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
No.
Oh.
No table.
Yeah.
I'd like to entertain a motion to table. I'd like to entertain a motion to table PW 2011-12.
You'd like to make a motion.
I'd like to, not entertain, sorry, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to table the PW 2011-12 and send it back to Public Works Committee. Well, actually, let's just table it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
No, roll call or?
Yes.
Roll call vote, please.
Gilson.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
Munns.
Aye.
Spears.
Aye.
Olosina.
Aye.
Bunkhauser.
Aye.
Ilshewski.
Aye.
Teeling.
Nay.
Okay, we have no Economic Development Committee report, no Public Safety Committee report, no Administration Committee report. Anything from the Park Board, Bart?
No report.
Do you want to mention anything about kayak attack? That was after the last city council meeting, right?
It was. I was going to defer to one of our two ribbon cutters or boat captains. Unless you want me to give a report.
Either way, we can talk about it under additional business. Any plan commissioners, ZBA report? Okay, moving on to mayor's report. First item is appointments to boards and commissions. I would like to entertain a motion to approve the mayor's appointments of Bob Johnson to the Fire and Police Commission, Anna Schwein and Margene Westland to the Human Resources Commission, Barb Johnson, Joanne Grider, Sandy Lindblom, and Susan Chacon to the Library Board, Ken Koch and Mark Dilday to the Park Board, Tom Lindblom to the Plan Commission, and Fred DeSalle to the Police Pension Fund Board.
Second.
No.
So moved.
So moved.
Now I can second.
Third. Chris and Rose. Any comments or questions on these appointments?
I just have one quick question.
Go ahead.
Is the Plan Commission, is that a full board then? Will is that a full board? Is that everybody?
There are still 2 appointments outstanding.
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure.
Yes, there's 2 outstanding.
Okay.
Yeah, there's, probably next meeting, we'll have more appointments. We just didn't have time to get everyone. Even
Okay.
department heads didn't get appointed yet. They have to get appointed soon. Any other comments, questions? Roll call, please.
Spears.
Aye.
Colosimo.
Aye.
Funkhauser.
Aye.
Milczewski.
Aye.
Seeley.
Aye.
Gilson.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
Munns.
Aye.
Next item is Library Board Annual Report, and this is an informational item. I don't know if anyone had any comments or questions on the annual report. This is mandated by statute that we have this annual report from the library. Okay, no comments or questions. We will move on to the city debt obligations and options. This is another informational item. Right after swearing in last week on May 10th, we set up a meeting. Well, we set up a meeting prior, but May 11th we met with Peter Raphael and Kevin McKenna, our bond counsel and our financial advisor. And I asked Alderman Spears to sit in with me on these meetings since she is chairman of administration committee. And the whole point of the meetings was to look at our debt obligations and what can be done in light of the new sales tax that was passed. It's anticipated that the sales tax will generate about $1.5 million in tax revenue. And some of us who have been on the council a while know that that $1.5 million will not cover all of our future bond obligations. So I kind of thought it was a priority to see what we can do to abate these bonds and get these bond payments off of the property taxes. And that was the whole point of the meetings, to see what options are out there for us. Refinancing is one option. It would definitely lower our current obligations, but it comes at a cost. It stretches out the payments and it incurs quite a bit more interest. So I asked Mark to put together a little bit of a presentation for us to see where we stand and what options are available. And Kevin McKenna from Spear Financial is here to answer any questions that we may have.
Sure.
Run with it.
I'm happy to project any of the spreadsheets on the board if anybody wants to see them and have me narrate them. But really, the 2 spreadsheets that are going to be of most use to you are going to be Spreadsheet E and Spreadsheet F. Spreadsheet E is basically a scenario where you don't do any refinancing and take your sales tax dollars and put them towards your debt obligations for the next few years, and what kind of impact that would have on property taxes associated with bonds, your general city property taxes, and then your total property tax bill. Spreadsheet F takes into account the most advantageous as far as per year costs refinancing, which is a 20-year bond. So obviously you incur the most interest with that option, and there are other options for different terms and different payment levels. But if you wanted to decrease the property tax burden of the city related to bonds, that would be your best option. So Spreadsheet E is in your packet. If you've got the PDF in front of you, it's page 244. And Spreadsheet F is, I think, 4 pages after that. And basically, Spreadsheet E shows that if you were to take $1.5 million non-home rule sales tax dollars per budget year and dedicate those to your debt obligations, you can decrease your total property tax associated only with debts by about 54% next year. 51% the year after, and that number would dwindle because your bond obligations actually go up year after year for the next 4 or 5 years. So that probably ends up somewhere around 35% if you're looking at fiscal year 16 or 17. Now again, your bonds are only about 45% of your total city property tax bill. So those of you that got a property tax bill and looked at it, generally it went up from about 45 cents per $100 EAV to about 90 cents per $100 EAV. So 44% of that is related to bonds only. The other portion of it is related to tax cap, and if you remember the chart I did at the tax levy last year, really your share of the property tax pie. So if you didn't appeal your home value and everybody else did, you're going to be paying more next year. So,
Time out, Bart.
yes,
Is there a spreadsheet F in the online packet?
it is. It's
Is it in the
251.
Yeah,
it's 4 pages after spreadsheet E. The reason I did that, separated them, was because Kevin McKenna's documents for the debt service schedule and his analysis of our debts are included in between that. So I wanted to make sure everybody saw that before they saw spreadsheet F and understood it. So apologize if it caused some confusion. I was saying that the total city property tax, because the bonds only make up a percentage of your total city property tax, under scenario E, would decrease next year by about 28%, and then obviously that would erode a little bit as your payments go up each year. So you probably end up at about a quarter reduction 4 or 5 years from now. And all of that equates to a 3% reduction in your tax bill overall. So since the city is such a small portion of it, even though we have wild fluctuations from year to year depending on our debt obligations, it is a smaller portion of your total tax bill, so it has less of a financial impact inside the school district. So spreadsheet F is basically laid out in the same manner. What it does, though, is instead of making your Rob Roy payments at $2 million next year, $2.5 million the year after, $3 million the year after that, and I think $3.5 million is the most expensive payment, you refinance it over 20 years. For an average payment of about $950,000 per year. So again, you're accruing additional interest and spreading out that debt, but the year-to-year payments are significantly reduced. You could reduce comfortably 90% of your property tax debt related to bond obligations next year, and then the year after that it would slowly erode again to probably 75 or 80% at its peak. But that would equate to a 35% total city property tax reduction year over year, which would have a 4 or 5% total reduction in your property tax bill. So again, while we're only talking the difference between 3 and 4% between the two options in your total tax bill, that could be hundreds of dollars for somebody who has an expensive home or a business. So those are the two main options. The 4 debt service schedules that are included in your spreadsheet show a refinancing of a 20-year term, 15-year term, which are normal. Each year you pay the same amount for 15 or 20 years. But there is also sort of a balloon payment option where you could do a 14-year or 17-year bond, where basically there's one tier of payments for 10 years, and then the last 5 years of the term you would double. And the theory behind that would be that hopefully in 10 years or 15 years, we will have growth to pay for this debt obligation, and then you'd be able to make those payments comfortably. And we have used that debt service scheduled option before. And that's actually what we're talking about when we're talking about our Rob Roy debt obligations increasing per year. We structured it that way. So I'm happy to project this again if anybody has any questions, or I can answer questions about my presentation.
Now, we did also talk about prepayment if we did refinance.
Yes.
If things do pick up, we do have extra revenue, we can prepay this after, I believe it was 7 years. Kevin, did you want to come up in case there are any questions? Or anything you want to add to what Bart had just said?
Good evening. Yes, you do get to prepay after about 7 years. I would say also the wraparound was done not only in case you do have growth coming in again, but also because you have a lot of other water and sewer bonds that are getting paid off in the next 10 or 11 years. So those free up additional revenues, and those will help you with those balloon options if you choose to do that.
Okay. And again, this is informational, not something we have to decide tonight, but I wanted to get this out there so everyone's on the same page, everyone's aware of it. So any questions?
Yeah, I do. So basically, the difference we're looking at between refinancing and not refinancing as a total reduction for the taxpayer on their full tax bill is the difference between 3% and 4%, roughly.
Roughly.
1% off their tax bill. However, how much is that going to cost the taxpayers in additional interest at the back end of this refinance? How much more interest are we paying if we refinance versus not refinancing?
On an $11.5 million principal is what we're looking at in general. It's anywhere between $4.5 million to, I think, $6.5 million, depending on what term we select. So you are looking at a substantial interest cost, but... you know.
So, I mean, the way I see it is, so to reduce the taxpayer's bill 1%, we're adding another $4.5 to $6 million of debt obligation to the city's back.
Yes.
No, the difference, because if we, the sales tax money is going to be applied to the debt obligation no matter what. So we are already reducing it 3%. To reduce it the additional 1%, we are now taking on an additional, say, average $5 million in obligation. And I find that to be a very bitter pill to swallow. And I would ask for citizen feedback on that as well to your aldermen. As long as this council commits to the additional sales tax revenue going directly to that bond, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to vote to spend $1 of that additional sales tax on anything else but the bonds. To change 1% of your tax bill, you're asking us to take on $5 million more in debt obligation, which we will do if that's what the citizens want us to do, but I would appreciate citizen feedback. I find that to be a very bitter pill to swallow.
I agree, it's a very bitter pill. I mean, in my personal finances, I'm very debt adverse. I'd rather pay it off, bite the bullet and pay it off, but I mean, it was a huge, huge increase, and I'm sure everyone heard from their constituents over the city's portion of their property tax bill doubling, basically. You know, so that's the policy decision to make. And do we want to bite the bullet and pay these things off? You know, abate what we can with the new sales tax revenue and not abate what we don't have the money for, which should help a little bit, obviously. But the property taxes are still going to remain a little higher than they were prior to this current tax year.
There are a couple timelines we have, depending on if we choose to refinance. There is a chance if we wanted to make the decision soon to refinance this year that you might be able to reduce your burden for the December 2011 payments, and that's still a maybe at this point. Again, we've already collected the taxes, so essentially what you'd be doing would be taking that money and then applying it to a future year's payment. And so, you know, if we wanted to do that and get in soon, we could impact this year still. However, next year's payments, you know, are December 2012. We have to make the abatement, non-abatement discussion by February or March of 2012. So we do have a few months to decide, and then the bond refinancing could take place anytime between February of 2012 and December of 2012.
Go through those timelines one more time for me, Bart, because I
One would be, Kevin, if we wanted to refinance to make our December 2011 bond payments cheaper, we'd have to notify you by July, August?
Yeah, the whole process takes perhaps 90 days.
Okay.
So if you want to impact this year's payment, or actually next year's payment, you'd have to do it preferably sometime this fall, before you got to the abatement or non-abatement decision. If you chose not to do it for next year, but you chose instead to impact the following year, or perhaps the December payout in 2012, you could then do it next fall and do that. Because, you know, if you look at the existing debt, it does climb precipitously. So, you know, whereas I understand, you know, refinancing and pushing debt out costs money. Your option may be, there's also perhaps a third option. You know, there's you pay as you go, and that means you're going to have this sales tax plus some property tax in place. You can refinance the whole thing out long to give yourself some room, whether it's the 15-year option, the 14-year option, the 20-year option, whatever. But there is sort of a mix, because if you look at your debt, it's ranging from about $1 million in December of 2011 out to $3 million, or a little over $3 million. And you're only talking about $1.5 million. So you could take a sort of a middle path and just say, okay, you're going to refinance, you're not going to refinance the basic $1.5 million that you believe you're going to get your sales taxes, and just take any debt service over the $1.5 million and refinance that out. And that would probably give you, that probably maybe result in a total of a 10-year issue or something. I mean, it's a question of affordability.
Okay. And I have one more question, I think it's for Bart. Bart, and at this point, since the the sales tax increase has passed, when do we actually start realizing that gain?
January 1st, 2012, that is dependent upon the city council action to authorize it. So that will be in front of you in the next month.
Okay, which we will. Okay. Okay, thank you.
I think three of us can actually vote to have someone speak. We do have a resident there with his hand up. I would like to move to have him speak.
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead, Dan. If you guys don't.
You were saying going from $11.5 million is the debt, and if you refi, you would then take the interest cost and would increase. Did you say 4.5 to 6.5 million?
Yeah.
Over what time frame?
Anywhere from 14 to 20 years, depending on which option term. So 14 would be on the low end, obviously, and then 20.
So what rate would we be coming from? I mean, if we're refinancing down, you have an idea what that rate is?
The rate on the 10-year term, Kevin has in his memo at 4.15%. Well, go ahead and...
Yeah, some of the bonds are at 4.15, some are at 5.5 approximately.
Right now, we're at 5.5.
The existing bonds.
Okay.
And if we refinanced, we're looking at bonds going to about 4.25. I mean, this isn't being done for savings.
Well,
this is being done for cash flow.
I think 75 basis points on $11.5 million is about, what, $80,000 plus a year?
Yeah.
Times 10 years is $800,000. So the 1% reduction in the property tax would be an assumption that the rest of the property taxes will go nowhere or stay level for 10 years. Right?
Well, the only thing we have control over is the city's portion. That's all we can control.
Right.
What the school board and the fire districts and everybody else does, there's nothing we can do about that.
I'm making assumptions that basically nothing would change for 10 years, obviously.
Which would gross annexations instead of these vast.
Hey, Larry, could you state your name for the record, please?
What?
State your name for the record so the clerk can...
Oh, Larry DeBoer.
Could you spell your last name?
Capital D, small e, capital B, O-R-D.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions, remarks? Do we want to send this on to admin for some more discussion? I mean, a decision doesn't need to be made anytime in the near future, but I think we should talk about it some more and bounce it around with admin. Think about it, and that's a good recommendation. Get feedback from your constituents, see how people feel, and bring it back to admin.
Bart, can you provide us all with that timeline that you gave us was kind of mixed and matched, and I'm not sure I'm 100% clear on when we have to make the decision and what year that'll affect and things like that. So can you give us that timeline and clarity so that people understand when we poll our constituents what we're talking about? Thank you.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much. Moving on. I will entertain a motion to direct the Plan Commission to conduct the public hearing regarding a proposed amendment to Title 11, Chapter 1, Section 4, regarding exemptions to requirements for plats.
So moved.
Second.
Do we have comments or questions on this, or would anyone like a little background from Christie or Attorney Orr?
Sure, I'll
up the subdivision control ordinance, our zoning ordinances, to make things align with state criteria and to progress development quicker through our process. We're looking at amending our subdivision control ordinance just to relieve the restriction that platted land can only be subdivided if it existed on the date of adoption of the subdivision control ordinance. If we remove that, and we'll just add a provision that if platted land is subdivided, that it meets all of our standard zoning conditions. And this is only for sections that will just be subdivided into two parts. We don't have to go through the platting process again. And that's all that we're asking. And that's already in the state statutes. If someone were to do that in unincorporated areas, they could do that.
Any comments, questions?
Seems logical.
Yes. Roll call, please.
Colosimo.
Aye.
Funkhauser.
Aye.
Olszewski.
Aye.
Teeling.
Aye.
Gilson.
Aye.
Cott.
Aye.
Munns.
Aye.
Spears.
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have a motion to approve a collective bargaining agreement between the Illinois FOP Labor Council representing Yorkville Police Sergeants and the United City of Yorkville, and authorize the mayor and chief of police to execute.
So moved.
Second.
Comments or questions on this? Roll call, please.
Funkhauser.
Aye.
Olszewski.
Aye.
Teeling.
Aye.
Gilson.
Aye.
Cott.
Aye.
Munns.
Aye.
Spears.
Aye.
Colosimo.
Aye.
Okay, we have no city council report. Do we have a city clerk's report? City treasurer's report? No report. Do we have any community or liaison reports? Rose?
Okay, I have a report. Once again, I attended the Neal board meeting, and Charles Johnson, who is the Illinois Department on Aging Director, addressed the board once again regarding the state's budget. He reported the state of Illinois has $7 billion outstanding in unpaid bills, which means it is 6 to 7 months behind in payments. And both a cut in programs and borrowing, of course, are going to be necessary. The proposed 2012 budget includes elimination of the circuit breaker program and the Illinois CARES program. The state budget is scheduled to be approved by May 31st. And I'd like to request everybody to please urge our state senators to preserve the funding for critical home and community-based senior services in the state budget. The budget proposed by Governor Pat Quinn is bad news for Illinois seniors struggling to remain in their homes as they age. Illinois lawmakers simply cannot balance the state budget on the backs of our senior citizens. Nearly 200,000 seniors rely on the Illinois CARES RX program to afford their prescription medications. The proposed budget eliminates funding for this critical program and will force many seniors to choose between medications and their other basic necessities. It is far more cost-effective for the state to provide home and community-based care over institutional care. Yet this proposed budget also cuts funding for services such as home-delivered meals and transportation. Nearly half of all nursing home eligible people seeking more cost-effective home-based care will also be turned away from the state's Community Cares program. So again, please contact your senators. You only have until May 31st if they do go ahead and approve the budget at that time. And the second one is actually a happy type of report. And I'd like to congratulate the Yorkville girls track team. Mark Johnson's niece Ally Hester, was part of the Yorkville girls track team that brought home a first place in state in the 4x400 meter relay several days ago. They set a new Class 2A record at 9 minutes, 17 seconds, and 32 tenths, breaking the record that they set with Hampshire last year. Allie also won 5th place in the 1,600 meter run, which earned her all-star honors, all-state honors. The relay team consisted of Bry, and pardon my pronunciation, Stufert, thank you, Leanna Palmer, Ally Hester, and Esther Bell. And I think that we should congratulate these young women for an outstanding job. That's all I have.
We did ask Bart to put that on the agenda for June 14th, to see if we can get them in here and formally recognize them.
Oh, great, great.
Any other liaison reports? I would like to report that we did meet with Bank of America last week. Representatives from Bank of America came out. One of the topics we did talk about was Grand Reserve and the large increase in our HOA fees. They assured us that they had talked with PSI and tried to trim down the budget some, and everyone in Grand Reserve should be getting a letter with a new budget amount in there. I did not see the budget. They didn't share it with me, but they said that they did what they can to pare down costs. So hopefully you'll be hearing from some residents in Grand Reserve that they did receive the letter. I'd be interested to see what they did.
Good job.
Okay. Do we have any staff reports?
No report this evening.
Any additional business?
I just was wondering if the videos are going to get back on the website of the meetings.
Not in the foreseeable future. It is something that we are trying to do, but without an IT person, we don't think that we have the capability to do it. So I've got a team together that's going to try to meddle through some instructions that were left behind. We'll see if we're successful.
The audio is nice, though. The audio gets up quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, until we can get the video back online, keep getting that audio up quick.
I have just one thing for Chief Hart. Chief Hart. Hello. One day last week, there was a baseball game going on right by McHugh Road, and the people were parked out in the street, so there was like just one lane that was open. Is there something that we can do about that?
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. If they're more than 12 inches into the roadway, that can be an issue.
Okay.
We'll definitely look into it. Was on the queue?
It was on McHugh, right by where Smith Engineering used to be, yeah.
There's no parking on the side of the road, too.
We've had numerous complaints. We get those this time of the year with all the Wells Islands around town, but I'll make sure they keep an eye on it.
Okay. I mean, are they allowed, I thought we had an agreement with, when it was Smith Engineering, to allow them to park in there. No, we don't?
The property owner had allowed the parents to park there up until a point, I think it was a year or two ago, and then declined to continue that. But that was between the property owner and the individual organizations. And there is a no parking, I believe, along one side of McHugh Road there, too. So
It is restricted to one side of the road.
I don't think I saw any signs up. I know we have on Hayden, I believe.
Okay.
We have no parking, certain hours and everything, but I did, well, of course, there were a lot of cars there. It could have been signs.
I remember having this conversation before about
Right.
McHugh and restricting parking on one side.
Yeah.
Okay.
That just reminded me of something else. I got a call, and question would be for the chief. Somebody called me about getting signs up about children at play. Is that something that they would do, like if they had a neighborhood watch, that they can go through that to get them, or how do they get those up in their neighborhoods? Because they are concerned people are, yeah.
I can answer that one.
Okay.
We typically, unless it's a special situation, we can't put up that many children playing signs because
Everybody
would want it every
right.
12 houses.
Okay.
So we
I didn't know if that was a...
What I've told people, and I've seen them in my own neighborhood, is they're just signs they buy from and put in their parkway. And they're bright orange or bright green, and they put a flag on them.
Oh, okay.
And it really catches your attention, it says children playing.
Okay.
They just put them in their parkway.
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay, I didn't know if that was like a neighborhood watch thing, type thing, or what. I don't know. Okay, thank you.
I'm glad you both mentioned baseball and children, because I almost forgot. I do have a baseball with the mayor event this Thursday evening at the Bristol Bay Ball Field, field number 2, not the field by the school. It is in the southeast section of Bristol Bay at the corner of Sarasota and Pensacola, I believe. I will be there from 5:30 to 7. Anybody wants to come out, talk city business, offer suggestions, comments, or watch a good ball team play baseball, feel free to see me out at Bristol Bay.
Oh, I thought it was an invitation for us to play against you. And I think we'd have quite a few people here.
Would you like to go there, Alderman Smith?
Sure, I would.
One more thing regarding the community gardens, the parking. I know I talked in part about this. Issue brought to my attention is that gardeners have been driving out on the field to the actual gardens. I've seen it a few times myself. One of them actually, I talked to her, I knew her. She brought up the fact that she saw that there was a mown path and said, well, they wouldn't have mown it unless it was meant to drive out there. I know the entire field's now been mown, but I think some clarification needs to be made where the parking is acceptable out there. Right now it's dry, it's not doing any damage, but it could be in the long run.
We'll put something together.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? We do have a short executive session, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees by the public body, for collective negotiating matters, and for pending or imminent litigation.
Second.
Do we need a move?
So moved, I mean.
So
Second.
moved, George. Second, Rose. All righty then.
So we have to vote?
Oh,
yeah. We got to vote.
Spears?
Aye.
Milszewski? Aye. Colosimo?
Aye.